Okay, so just starting again. So this is the story of David and Avigayil, and this occupies this or shares with a number of other stories the this role of the wise woman, and we're going to see how Avigayil plays that role. Someone with certainly with perspective, centeredness, wisdom that she is going to share with David. So the beginning of this chapter really has, on the face of it, looks like it has nothing to do with the story of at hand. It's just one sentence. It's Vayamat Shmuel. Shmuel passed away. Vayikbetzu kol Yisrael, and all Israel gathered together. Vayisbedulo, and they gave eulogies for Shmuel. Vayikberuhu beveito berama, and they they buried him in his home in Ramah. Vayakom David vayered el midbar Paran, and David went to Midbar Paran. Now, we're about to get into the story of David and Avigayil. The protagonist in the story is going to be somebody named Naval HaKarmeli. So we're talking about, where's the Carmel?
Near Haifa.
Right, it's in the north. So David, when we last met him, he was down in the south, and he was in the caves of Ein Gedi. So what some of the commentators say is that the death of Shmuel was going to bring lots of people through the Ein Gedi area or through the south to mourn Shmuel, and so that David, who is sort of still occupies the status of persona non grata, is going to need to leave the south, and he's going to head to the north, and that's one piece. The other is, so that might be one reason for this sentence here. Sort of just gives us context. Why is David all of a sudden going to Midbar Paran? The second is a slightly different question, and that is that what Shmuel's role was to be the kingmaker, right? He's the one who made Shaul king. So if Shaul, if Shmuel rather has died, then it may be a sort of a kind of signaling, if you will, of the end of Shaul's proper reign, right? So, okay. Now, on to the story of Naval. It says, "V'ish b'ma'on." There was a man in Ma'on, u'ma'asehu ba'Carmel, and his work, his livelihood was done in the Carmel. Va'ish gadol ma'od. He was a very I don't think it means he was physically large. I think it means he was a macher. He was a person of great stature. Um, Velot son shloshet alafim. So he had, he had 3,000 sheep. That's a pretty good flock. Ve'elef izim, and he had 1,000 goats. V'hi gzoz et tzono b'Carmel, and he was going to shear his sheep in the Carmel. V'shem ha'ish Naval, and the name of the ish is Naval. V'shem ishto Avigayil. His name was Naval, and her name was Avigayil. Now Naval is is an odd name, and Avigayil will later on in the dialogue, she will play on the oddness of his name. Does anybody know what the word Naval means? No?
No.
Rivka, what is davar minubal? No? Got nothing there? Okay. Naval means, it could mean disgusting, or also could mean ungrateful. In Shirat Moshe, not the brachot at the end of Ha'azinu, it talks about Am Yisrael, Am Naval velo Chacham. You are an ungrateful and unwise nation. So the name Naval is almost. There are many stories in the Tanakh that have, I would say, they're like morality play names. An example of that is the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth. So the word Naomi, she means pleasant. She has two children. One's name is called Machlon, and the other one is Kilion. So one is named disease, and the other one is destruction. You can imagine at the bris, the rabbi says, "Okay, v'yikarei shemam b'Yisrael. What are you going to call them? Machlon v'Kilion. You sure? Right? Probably not their given names. It's part of the construct. The hero of the book of Ruth. What is his name?
Boaz.
Good. Boaz. What does the name Boaz mean? It's two words. Put them together. Bo and Az.
Come in.
Well, close.
Comes as.
Yeah, but it's Az with an Ayin, not with an Aleph.
Oh.
It is in him is strength. Okay. So then that's just an example of how sometimes names have they operate with significance as well. And this story doesn't even let you get away from that. Avigayil will give us that in a very frontal way. And it also tells us, in contrast to the fact that, the Vashem Ish Naval and Vaisha Tovat Seichel. She was a very wise woman, Vifat Toar, and she was beautiful. And why is it that there's so many wonderful women with completely repugnant husbands? I don't know, but this is another pair like that. Vaish Kashevera, and he was hard and difficult and evil. Viramalim, and he had evil plans. Vuhu Kalbi, and he was a Calebite. All right. So Vayishma David. So David hears Bamidbar ki gozer Naval tono. He hears that Naval is going to shear his sheep. Vayishlach David asara ne'arim. He sends 10 young men. It's a little posse out. Vayomer David lanim alu Carmela uvatem el Naval usha'altem lo bishmi l'shalom. Go and say, Naval, your friend David says hello. Va'amartem, and you should say, Kol l'chayai. L'chayai means l'chaim. Say to him, l'chaim. Va'ata shalom uveitcha shalom v'chol asher l'chol shalom. Peace to you, peace to your family, peace to your household. Right? Va'ata shamati ki gozim lach ata haroim asher l'cha hayu imanu lo hachlamnum v'lo nifkad lahem umah kol yimei otam al Carmel. So David says to he plants in amongst his messengers, say the following: you're going up to shear your sheep, and these years we didn't do anything to harm you, right? And not a single one of these sheep is missing. Excuse me.
Labriut.
Thank you. So not a single one of these sheep is missing. Just know, your flocks have been well taken care of. Sha'alet ne'arecha v'yagidu lach. Go ask your shepherds; they'll tell you. V'imtzu ani mechein be'inecha ki al yom tov banu tana et asher timtzai lecha lavrer levincha David. So, we want there's going to be some crumbs from your table. We're asking for a little bit. Give us a little bit. This is a big sheep shearing festival. You're going to probably slaughter a couple of lambs. There's probably going to be, a little bit of stew going on. You could give David, a little bit of the victuals from your party. So, David's messengers go. They say these things to Naval, and then they wait for response. Vayanuchu, they were silent. Vaya'ad Naval et avdei David vayomer. So Naval answers. He says, "Vayomer mi David umi ben Yishai." Who is this David? Who is this son of Yishai? Hayom rabu avadim hamitpartzim ish mipnei adonav. These days there are so many servants who rebel against their masters. Okay, so his answer is interesting and telling. I'll read one more sentence and then we'll do a little analysis. V'lakachti et lachmi, I'm going to take my bread, vet memai, and my water, vet tivachti, and the animals that I slaughter, asher tavachti legozazai, which I slaughtered for my employees, the people shearing my sheep, v'natati lanashim asher lo yadati emi zeh hema, and I'm going to give them to some stranger I don't know anything about. So basically, it was not only it was a no, and you're a nobody. So one of the questions that many people ask is, was David's request appropriate, and was Naval's answer appropriate?
Well, my question is, why did he send his young men to Nabal in the first place?
Because, so I guess it depends on how you want to read David's position at the moment. Let's say David knows he's king, and part of his job as king is protecting the people. This is the classic relationship between the government of Canada and its subjects, the government of England and its subjects, France and its subjects, everywhere, right? The government offers protection to us, and then, Revenue Canada takes a bit of my sheep shearings every month, right? Whether I like it or not.
But
I could say, who is Trudeau? Who is this son of Pierre Elliott, right? I could say that generally is a good invitation for a long, hard meeting with some auditor and some direct freeze on your bank account. But that's the arrangement of government and subject. Is they offer protection, fire services, healthcare, whatever. Obviously it's a little more sophisticated now. Shaul and David were not offering social insurance and MSP, but the basic idea in many ways is the same. And so David, if David is the government, so this is a very ordinary request. I've made sure that no marauders have molested your business. Take care of me. Now, I'm gonna just say this. It's a bit of a harsh statement, but I think it just helps us to sort of appreciate this on a foil level, or as a bit of a devil's advocate. We've all seen some mafia movie here or there, where the local mafiosi come in and they say, we're offering protection services for your business, right? You pay us, $5,000 a month. We'll make sure that your business doesn't get robbed, right? I think that's called the shakedown. Most, I think the reason the mafioso work is because they don't have to beat that many people up. They beat 2 or 3 people up, and everyone else gets the message, and they realize, okay, this is the cost of doing business, right? But the difference between the mafia and the government is enormous, right? The mafia, they may actually provide a service. They may keep other criminals out of your shop. But in principle, that is the job of the VPD or the RCMP or whichever police forces in your neighborhood. And so there's a difference between legitimate authority and illegitimate authority. David, by virtue of David's current position, right, of being both king and not king, he is in that limbo state of being both legitimate and illegitimate at the same time. So his statements can ring both, government-esque and mafia-esque all in the same moment. Um, just let's now Naval. What do you think about Naval's response?
Pretty,
Well,
pretty.
was David already proclaimed king, or was he just sort of knowing himself so that the other guy really, if he hasn't been proclaimed king, then who is he really?
So David was secretly proclaimed king. Remember,
But Shaul is still
Shmuel
alive.
comes and and privately does that. But even Shaul knows that David is going to be king, right? Everybody around there knows that David is the guy who won all, who protects them from the Plishtim and is the military hero, and everybody can see where the puck is going here, right? So there's not been a moment where everybody says that. Now, again, to Naval's defense, the last people who helped David, the city of Nov, right? They didn't fare so well. Yeah, right. So he could be saying, look, and his answer is, these days there are a lot of slaves, servants, who are rebelling against their masters, right? Rabu avadim hamitpartzim ish mipnei adonav, right? One against the other. And so the idea is that he's sort of diminishing David because he's saying, this guy's just a servant of Shaul, and I don't need to listen to him, right? So that's sort of where we get to so far. All right, so here we are, sentence 12. Vayavchu narei David lidarkam. David's men turned back on their way. They vayashuvu, and they returned to David. Vayavo vayagidu lo kechol hadvarim haela. They tell him everything. Vayomer David la'anashav. David says to his men, Chigru ish et charbo. Gird your swords. Vayachgaru ish et charbo. And all of his men, armed themselves. They put on their swords. Vayachgor et David et charbo. And David put on his sword. Vayalu achrei David ka'arba me'ot ish. And 400 armed men now come with David. Umatayim yashvu ala kelim. And he left a camp of an additional 200 men. Now, just interestingly, who else has an armed force of 400 men in the stories of Tanakh?
Joshua?
Nope.
No.
Joshua's many more than that.
Oh.
Interestingly,
Esav.
Joshua's are not armed, at least initially.
Esav.
Correct. Esav. Right? And Esav's, anybody remember what Esav's blessing is? Al charbecha tichyeh. You will live by your sword. Right? So here, now, there's another interesting parallel between David and Esav. We may have mentioned it before, and it's a very hard one to remember. I'll just put it out there in case anybody does. Otherwise, I'll kind of give you the answer. They're the only two people in Tanakh who are referred to as Admoni, the red ones, right? They sort of have this outdoor ruddiness to them, right? They're both sort of outdoorsmen. So here, we sort of see the Tanakh very quickly giving us a very subtle reference to the Esav story. That here, David is mounting a force not unlike the Esav force. And he's about to, teach this guy Naval a lesson. Ula Avigayil eshet Naval, higid nar echad mehanarim lemor. So Avigayil, who was the wife of Naval, one of the young men told her, Hinei shalach David melachim hamidbar levarech et Adonenu vayat bahem. So David sent messengers to the wilderness where they were sheep shearing, and to greet our master, right? And he pushed them away. Va'anashim tovim lanu ma'od, and says this young man, these guys have been very, very good to us. V'lo hachlamnu v'lo pakadnu me'umah. Kol yimei hitalachnu itam biotenu basadeh. All the day they were very friendly to us. We weren't harmed. We didn't lose a single thing. Interestingly, back to the Yaakov Esav story. This is the story of Yaakov and Lavan, right? Yaakov makes a very similar claim to Lavan, that under my shepherding, not a single sheep was lost. I think part of the theme of this story, it's not accidental that this is a story about sheep, because A, David is a shepherd. B, the idea of being king is an idea about shepherding the people, and this idea of seeing the caring hand of David is sort of an important window to his role as being the king. But it is also bringing us back to the trickiness of Lavan and things like that. Okay. Now he goes even further, and he's going to say something boldly laudatory about David. Chomaya aleinu gam laila gam yomam. They were a wall for us, both night and day. Kol yemei heyotenu imam ro'im atzon. They were the Iron Dome, right? They're a wall against any kind of problem, right? So we really owe them something, says this young man. So what's interesting is that Naval doesn't inquire of his employees. He just simply is dismissive. Mi ben David u mi ben Yishai. Who's this David? Right? Mi David u mi ben Yishai. Who's David? Who's the son of Yishai? That I should contend with him. Well, if he was looking for an answer to that question, one of the employees, one of the shepherds that were there, could have answered that. We have exact quotes, right, of exactly how useful he was. Ve'ata, and no, di'i uri'i matasi ki chalta ra'et adoninu v'al kol beitenu v'hu ben bli'al midaber elav. So, what's going to happen here? We have to think carefully, because this is a very threatening situation that's going to happen, right? And our master is a very treacherous man, and sort of evil. Ben Belial. This is maybe one of the worst insults the Torah can throw at you, is that you are Ben Belial. You're sort of backstabbing, treacherous, evil, guileful. Okay. Here they translate it as nasty. Vatimaher Avigayil. Avigayil went quickly. Vatikach ma'atayim lechem ushnatayim nivlei yayin v'chamesh tzon. Right. So she goes and she takes 200 loaves of bread and wine, and she takes some sheep, v'chamesh si'im kali, and some roasted wheat, umeat simukim, and she takes sweets, umatayim divelim v'tasim achamorim, and pressed figs. She takes them to the donkeys to be taken to David. And she's going to present what is a very, very famous speech. We'll get there in a minute. To David. Vatomer lena'areha, ivru lefanai hinini achrechem baul ish naval lo higida. She tells to her young men, you guys go ahead of me, and I'll follow you. And she just doesn't tell her husband Naval. Interesting, there are overlays here too of the Yaakov, Esav, Lavan story, because Lavan is not told, and Yaakov goes without Lavan, and Yaakov also sends messengers in front of himself before he confronts Esav. And here David is playing, ironically, the role of Esav, at least until this point in the story. והיה היא רוכבת על חמור ויורדת בסתר, והיה והנה דוד ואנשיו יורדים לקראתה ותפגוש אותם. So she's riding on this donkey. She comes down secretly, and there's David and his men ready to greet her. ודוד אמר, אך לשקר שמרתי את כל אשר לזה, במדבר ולא נפקד מכל אשר לא מאומה, וישב לי רעה תחת טובה. He said, did I falsely protect all that belonged to your household, right? And nothing happened to it, and you returned me evil instead of good? כה יעשה אלוהים לאויבי דוד, וכה יוסיף את עם עשיר מכל אשר לו עד בוקר משתין בקיר. Says, so this is sort of the כה יעשה וכה יוסיף, sort of a language of a curse. This should happen, and even more so. If I allow even, and we've seen this term before, but this is sort of a derogatory term, if I let any of those who urinate on the wall live until morning, meaning all the men are going to die. ותרא אביגיל את דוד ותמהר ותרד מעל חמור ותיפול לאפי דוד על פניה וישתחוו ארץ. So Avigayil gets off the donkey and she bows down. And again, very much a Yaakov in front of Esav kind of a thing, bowing down. ותיפול על רגלה ותאמר בי אדוני העוון בי אני אדוני העוון. She says, it is my sin. Right? Immediately, she says, oh, I'm at fault. Now, she didn't even know, right? So she can't really be that at fault. But she starts with, I'm at fault. Immediately disarming him. ותדברנה אמתך באוזנך ושמע את דברי אמתך. Please, just give ear to what your woman servant will say. אל נא ישים אדוני את ליבו אל איש הבליעל הלזה. Do not pay heed to the evil heart of my wicked husband. And this is one of the great lines of Tanakh. Al Naval, to Naval, ki shmo kenhu. As is his name, so is his character. Right? They translate it here as his name means boar and he is a boar. There's a slightly different translation that I have that I thought was a good one. Okay. One second. Oh, here it is. His name reflects him. His name reflects him. Is Avi Weiss's translation. I thought that was a nice turn of phrase. His name reflects him. So, yeah. Yes, Dina.
When he talks about providing protection, was it just that one little foray up into his camp that he is referring to, or is he referring to?
We don't really know. We don't don't have a lot of background on that. We're sort of. Let's just say the clearest piece of information we have is the shepherd who gives testimony to Avigayil, and there it seems like there was some valuable protection for some reasonably extended duration.
Yeah, it sounds like he would have known David was around.
Yeah,
so
we don't have a lot of data on that, but it does seem like it was something worth something. So, okay. Naval Shemo Univala Imo. Right, and he is, so is his name, and this is how he behaves, and disgustingness is with him. Va'ani amatcha lo ra'iti et na'arei Adoni asher shalachta. I didn't see the messengers that you sent. V'ata Adoni, and now you, Chei Hashem, as God lives, v'chei nafshecha, as you live, asher mina'acha Hashem yivo b'damim v'hoshea yadcha lach, v'ata yu kenaval oivecha mavakshim el Adoni ra'a. This is maybe the most important line of the entire narrative. He says, The Lord who has kept you from seeking redress by blood with your hands, let your enemies and all who... Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Hello? I mistakenly believed that was the province calling to follow up on my positive diagnosis, but turned out it was a probation officer that I have to deal with for someone in the Shul orbit. So anyway, you never know who's calling from province of BC. But what is Avigayil saying to David? She's saying as follows. She's saying, right, God has kept this blood from your hands, right? And do you want to be, let all of your enemies fall like Naval, right? But you don't want to be like him, right? You want to keep the blood off of your hands. And she paints this picture where she is able to depict for David. Just imagine a little bit further, right? And let me take you 2 sentences further, and you'll see a little bit more. So she says, here's the present which I brought for you. Give it out to your men. Please bear my sin. Ki aso yaseh Hashem la'adoni bait ne'eman. Right? God is going to make for you a trustworthy household. Ki milchamot Hashem adoni nilcham. You fight the battles of God. V'ra'ah lo timatzeh b'cha miyamecha. And evil you don't want to be found in your hands at all. Right? So here, what is she saying? She's saying, she's saying, you want to keep your hands clean of unnecessary bloodshed. You need to make sure that you do not become like Naval. You don't want to let him make you into a person like him. What is fascinating about this story is our last story with David is David refuses to scratch a hair on Shaul's head because he had Rahmanut, he had mercy on Shaul, where he actually had real cause to take Shaul out, who was pursuing him and threatening him. Here, David is not demonstrating that kind of mercy, right? He seems heavy-handed, and Avigayil is saying to him, just wait, take a step back. Is this guy really worth your reputation? Is this guy really the one that you want to put on your record? Yes, you have the power to slice and dice this guy, but really, is that what you want your legacy to be, right? You could be the king who rules through fear, but that's not really who you are. That's not who you want to be. That's not who God wants you to be. And so she appropriately positions him to, she's the voice of wisdom. She's the one who says to him, okay, see this entirely differently. Think about your legacy. Think about who you're going to be, right? Think about whether or not you want this blood on your hands. Okay, we still have a bit more to do in this chapter. I'm gonna save the second half of this for next week. just because I feel like I'm pushing a little bit of the limits of my own strength at the moment.